Gladiator 2 is the most unnecessary film that I've watched in a long time, and since the first film is my favourite movie of all time, it was a tricky one for me to fathom that Ridley Scott would be coming back after a disastrous few set of movies and take another pop at one of the richest time period settings and one of the best movies that has ever come into fruition. So I go into this movie, I've seen some of the reviews, people saying it's terrible, some people are saying it's okay. I was fully expecting this to be the next Napoleon. But actually, it's okay. But first, before we get into Gladiator 2, let's talk a little bit about this man. This is Sir Ridley. He started off with an amazing array of movies. You've got Alien, you've got Gladiator, you've got the Titanic. No, that was the other guy, wasn't it? Ridley Scott is a fantastic filmmaker, and he is one of these people that champions history like no other. But does he really? You see, Ridley Scott, I think, has an ego issue. Because he is this fantastic filmmaker and great director, and of course he's got his own production company, Scott Free Productions. Really smart thinking there, mate. Nobody could have come up with that one. He's got the money that he needs. He doesn't need other funding, he just does it on his own. But what this means is he churns out movies at a rate unlike anything else. I mean, this is the past 10 years of his filmography. It is insane. It's like me trying to pump out enough Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord videos just so I can make something fairly creative and still pay the rent at the end of the month. But because of this huge output, like anything, you get some hits and some misses. But the last 10 years or so has mostly been misses. We had The Last Duel, which is a historical epic with Matthew Damon and Benjamin Affleck. And in fact, it was actually a good movie. They decided to really focus on the character stories, telling it from 3 different perspectives, but nobody went to watch it. Now, because Ridley Scott is a very humble man, what did he say? Did he say, you know what, I just did a little bit of art that I wanted to do here. I based it in a very niche topic and quite a dark subject as well. I mean, this is a woman who's... I can't say that on YouTube. But no, he didn't take it on the chin, understand that he was just doing a niche topic to a very small audience. He decided to blame the people that didn't go and watch this movie. It was millennials with phones. Right, fair enough. Then Napoleon comes along. Okay, this is not a niche subject. This is one of the most famous people in history. In fact, one of the most famous generals of all time. And has a beloved fan... Can you call it a fan base? I don't know. Does Hitler have a fan base? Napoleon has a huge budget and... No, it doesn't do very well either. Okay, well, sorry, now he's blaming the people that did watch the movie. I know, like, historical accuracy isn't a be-all and end-all in films, but this is, like, a thing that Ridley Scott likes to do, where he makes films about history, and then he just has a go at everybody that enjoys and has a passion for history. I've never understood this. You do know who your audience are, Mr. Ridley. You do know that the people that you are whinging about are the only people that you can get money from. Nobody else really cares about Napoleon other than history buffs. And history buffs do care about historical accuracy, but that aside, we come to Gladiator 2. This is a film that's actually been in production since 2002, 2001, a couple of years after the first one, but it got shelved by Paramount. There was also a storyline about Russell Crowe's Maximus coming back to life and time traveling. It's a bit of a shame we didn't get that one. That would have been cool. But as it finally got made and it was finally funded, it was based on Lucius, who was Maximus's son in the first Gladiator. Something that wasn't touched upon too much. It was kind of just a rumor, and they're like, okay, yeah, we could roll with that one. Anyway, okay, so we have Lucius. He's in Numidia. They try and sort of disguise him as this other character. They give him a completely different name. But the problem is, in all the promotional material, Paul Mescal was saying he's playing Lucius, so that twist doesn't actually come about. And we go through this story that's very similar to the first one. He is captured by the Romans, he goes to the provinces outside of Rome, he wins some fights, he eats a baboon, and then he goes to the Colosseum. In fact, he is one of the best fighters, some would say on par, if not better than Maximus. But it has loads of these, well, many of these callbacks to the first one. Quoting things like, I don't know, was said inside a tent between Aurelius and Maximus himself. How does he know? The film itself tells a pretty coherent story. Now, it does take a lot from the first movie, and it would not be able to exist without the first one, so yeah, it is a true sequel. Yet they do have to retroactively do flashbacks to the first movie, change the ending slightly just so this movie can exist. So that kind of proves that this probably didn't need to exist in the first place. But it does tell a more coherent story than, I don't know, Napoleon, which doesn't tell a story whatsoever. So that's a plus. The fight scenes are cool as hell. I think the choreography is brilliant. I think the film looks really good as well. If you look at the behind the scenes, the amount of effort that's been put into the practical work, there is CGI, of course, especially those sharks. They look absolutely awful. Sure, they flooded the arena, and they did that in reality. Kind of. They made the Colosseum, they made real boats to have to go into the Colosseum, and they actually had the actors on these real boats fighting, and it's really cool. Once again, the sharks looked awful. They should not have put sharks in there. If we're talking about pure performances, Paul Mescal does a fantastic job. I think Pedro Pascal as the Roman general does a great job as well. He kind of doesn't really have much of a role in the movie, but he's in there. And then we have sort of the twin emperors, Emperor Gita and the mental one. Okay, they do really stray far from history, because I think this is actually more like 100 years when these emperors actually ruled to when it's supposed to be set within the Gladiator universe. But Ridley Scott has never really paid too much attention to historical accuracy. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't think it hurts the film as much as it has in the past. You see, Ridley Scott has this thing against historical accuracy, which is ironic since he only makes historical movies. But it's not too bad in this film. I don't mind things where you take liberties on historical accuracy by moving characters around or putting them in different places, or even having made-up characters. I mean, Maximus is a completely made-up character. Commons didn't die like that. And of course, well, Marcus Aurelius was a little bit more of a megalomaniac than it was made in the first Gladiator. But that aside, I think it kind of works pretty okay in the second Gladiator. But what does grind my geriatrics is when there's historical accuracies that make no sense. There's no point to be in there, and it might as well just be Ridley Scott putting the middle finger up to any of his audience. Like when Lucius at the beginning is in Africa playing football. Okay, when was football invented? And this brings me to the whole point of this video. Gladiator 2 isn't a bad movie, but Gladiator 2 is also not a very good movie. It's a fine movie, and in fact, as much as that might seem like a diss, that's probably the best that Ridley Scott can hope for in the last few years of his career. So I think that's probably a thumbs up. I would say, in terms of emotional impact, it was nothing like the first one. Being my favourite movie of all time, going back and watching it time and time again, it still gets me with the Hans Zimmer score, Now We Are Free being one of the most beautiful soundtracks of all time. Of course, having the imagery of Russell Crowe in the arena, the petals falling down, and it does actually bring some of that back into Gladiator 2. And they are the only points that I felt anything other than, oh, that's kind of cool, or, okay, what the hell is that? You see, Gladiator 2 doesn't really have much of an emotional impact on me. Maybe it's because it's a new movie and it doesn't have the same legendary status as the first Gladiator, but the only parts that it made me feel anything is when it flashed back to the first movie, and I think that kind of says everything about the modern day Ridley Scott films in general. However, one thing I would say, as much as I kind of dislike the way Ridley Scott goes about making his movies, I think he is the only person doing this historical thing. He has a captive audience, and I will continue to go and see this historical stuff because nobody else is doing it at this budget. Even if he likes to poke forks in people's eyes and make fun of anybody that actually likes history, it's all we've got. So thank you, Ridley Scott, for continuing to championship this, well, part of history, depending on which one you decide to choose next. I know you'll ruin it, but it will still be, meh, that was kind of cool. And meh, that was kind of cool was the best we can really expect from Hollywood in 2024.